Doug Lehman, breaking it down in layman's terms. Today, I've got a special guest, a true sales leader in the community, and he gives back to the community as far as training programs, but a true sales leader. He's carried a quota, held a bag, hits his number. He's worked for companies like NCR, Ibis World, Gartner. He actually owns and is a founder of a company called Career Pipe, and he's an accomplished author. He's releasing his first co-authored book coming out in a couple of weeks. Not to timestamp this, but June 15th is a big day. From the Boogie Down Bronx, Eddie Baez. Eddie, welcome in layman's terms.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me. And yes, quite a packed schedule, but very excited to be here and talk about it.
Well, I'm excited too, because we initially met a couple years back at the Outbound Sales Conference, and obviously dropping the knowledge of a lot of authors and trainers. And you know, you were working at Ibis World, and now you're at Gartner as well. You've worn a lot of hats. Can you just walk me through briefly the highlights of your sales expertise, because it gives back to the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So first sales role ever was with NCR. So NCR was basically my first inside sales role and outside sales role. So I've done a little bit of both. There I kind of had a pretty in-depth training. We basically did a couple of offsites where I learned a lot of the initial kind of like ground or coursework for my career. Basically did that for about 2.5 years, and then transitioned to Ibis World, where I spent the bulk of my career is for about 6.5 years. I always say that that's where I cut my teeth, and that's where I really learned to kind of sell and be a sales professional. Ibis World afforded me quite a bit of professional development. They actually were the ones that allowed me to go to the Outbound Conference and the Sales Success Summit. And essentially in that role, I was the 3-time Sales Performer of the Year. Had done that consecutively for 3 years, and was afforded quite a few opportunities also as well through just relationships from people at Ibis World. I had a friend who worked at the company and actually helped me to get acquainted with the Dale Carnegie sales relationships or relationship selling course, which is where I did some of the training on or professional development outside of Ibis World. And then now recently, after launching Career Pipe, have started a role at Gartner, which is a research and advisory firm, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the country. So that's a little bit about my sales background. In terms of the passion projects,
right, let's get into it. We're going to definitely touch on that.
So I started Career Pipe roughly around 2.5 years ago. My business partner Scott Hanrahan and I met at a meetup event. We were both very keen on networking and networking opportunities. And the Enterprise Sales Forum, which actually was meeting pre-pandemic in New York and across the city, was hosting a CIO event. We met, talked a little bit about what was missing in the sales space, and we both arrived at we needed to create more access for people of color and minorities to find B2B sales roles and really think of it as a noble profession. So we founded Career Pipe as a means to try to do that. And most recently, as you had alluded to, working on Teams Win Championships, where we're basically co-authoring a book about the paradigm shift from an I-focused to we-focused sales selling model. And that actually came as a byproduct of having gone to the Outbound Conference.
Well, there's a lot there to unwrap, but more importantly, you can see the sales credentials that Eddie brings, and go to his LinkedIn profile. You'll see it there as well, an outline, chronological style, but his passion project. I want to kind of lean into that. But first, let's talk about the book coming out. It's the book this co-author with you and 6 authors total, international flavor to it, a global perspective, Teams Win Championships. How did that come about? I mean, you've got 6 different authors, 5 countries, and charities that are all involved in this great nonprofit give back to the sales community. Let's talk about how that even started. Teams Win Championships. In layman's terms, break it down for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So first of all, it was a byproduct of the Outbound Conference. Essentially, a good friend of mine, John DeMarzo from DeMarTech, had reached out to me over LinkedIn after the conference, and we had stayed pretty connected. He had mentioned to me briefly that this guy, Andy Jafke, out of Spain, was working on a book project called Teams Win Championships. So Andy was really kind of the originator of the idea and really, honestly, the glue, the heartbeat of this group. Basically, John, Andy, myself, James, Craig, Pablo Escobar, or as he likes to call himself, the good Pablo Escobar.
Exactly.
And then the prima donna killer, as we call him, Mattia, all joined together, and we decided to co-author the Teams Win Championships book. So it's more or less kind of the background. And then the book itself is focused on really cultivating a we-focused shift or paradigm shift, where, you know, a lot of us kind of collectively spoke about what our own experiences looked like. And a lot of it was, you know, the lone wolf, I-focused mentality of sales. And whether it was a large enterprise like Teradata, which is where Andy and Pablo are from, or, you know, a smaller privately held organization like IBISRoll, which is where I was from when we started the project, the same rules apply. We all felt the isolation and the difficulty of having to do it all alone, be expected to do it all alone, and also just the difficulty of having to, you know, kind of figure out what resources to pull in and where. And that's when we collectively were like, well, why don't we write about our own experiences, both anecdotal and just some fact-based evidence on why we think a team-based selling approach is the optimal solution for our modern day sales. So that's really the preface and the objective of the book is helping as many salespeople who are struggling with the same thing find or try to build a framework for a team-based model towards their selling process.
Well, I hear the word team, and I hear the word we a lot, and you're having a collective here of again, 6 authors, 6 different experiences, different mindsets, but you all came together. What a dynamic task that is. I mean, it's 5 nations, 6 authors, a collective book. Then you got contributors to the book, and one of the gentlemen that I know quite well, Victor Antonio, was part of the Who's Who contributors. Can you speak on that a little bit, the input that you guys have all drawn in that circle?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to actually writing the book, we wanted to make sure that we had not just ourselves, you know, kind of shape the narrative. We wanted to make sure that we looked at the pillars of the community, the Victor Antonios of the world, the Scott Ingrams of the world, people who are very dynamic and vibrant parts of the sales community. And we wanted to just pick their brain about, you know, what is it that you feel, you know, makes the we paradigm work, and we asked some of the hard questions. So we built a Patreon page and an Indiegogo page. Specifically for the Patreon page, we made it so that if anyone contributed, they'd also have access to the interviews, and we actually used a lot of the interviews with those folks, and repurposed them into the actual book, and actually included their thoughts on some of these subjects, specifically around team building, you know, what's happening in the good times and the bad times, what makes for effective, you know, consistently top performing sales teams, and what really brings them together. The one other thing, and I wanted to mention this, and thank you again to all the contributors for the book. Wanted to say that it is a nonprofit project, and that all proceeds are actually going to 6 separate charities that each of the co-authors had chosen. So I chose Management Leaders of Tomorrow, the MLT program, and I'm currently trying to just procure the person to secure the donations for. But basically, all of our proceeds are being split 6 ways, and each one contributing to different to charities. So mine is for Management Leaders, which is basically providing access and equitable opportunities for people of color in New York to go into management roles. But we have everything from the Pulmonary Fibrosis Association in Canada, to cancer treatment in Italy. So they're all very, very good, very great charities, and things that we're all very passionate about.
Well, I love that concept, and especially the charities that you're giving to. And as I said earlier in the start of this interview or this conversation we're having, is that, you know, you give back to the community, and I love the fact that on a global scale you guys are doing that. The launch date, if I'm correct, is June 15th. Talk a little bit about that, and how can people register? How can they find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is June 15th. We have a registration link, which I'm hoping we'll put up after the interview as well. But it's on our Teams Win Championships page, the landing page on the LinkedIn profile. And if you haven't seen it already, Andy's been posting quite a bit about the registration. One of the big shout outs and one of the biggest thank yous that I want to issue also is to Mike Weinberg. Mike Weinberg is the author and New York Times bestseller, New Sales Simplified. And Mike has very graciously offered to and has written the foreword for our book, and will also be one of the folks on the launch. So we're going to have a panel-led discussion where you can ask us and Mike Weinberg some questions, and we're very excited and again very thankful to Mike for being able to contribute in such a big way.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing that as well. And obviously, I've got an opportunity to know Mike Weinberg through his books and the Outbound Conference as well. I mean, I'm excited about the book launch. Going through this, I mean, this to coordinate you 6 guys, 5 different nations in a pandemic. It was a lot of virtual conference calls. Is there anything takeaway from a production standpoint? But what have you learned from just a journey of authorship, co-authorship? If you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start off by saying that all these gentlemen are now brothers and extended family. When we started and embarked on this, we didn't realize how much time we'd end up spending together. And all of us, sacrificed every single one of our Saturdays for over 15 months to not only write together, but also, not forgetting that we are in a crisis and that things are going on. They were my sounding board. They were my therapist at times, my best friends. I mean, we pretty much went through everything together. We all, experienced loss together. It was a range of emotions. It was a range of things that we individually had never, come across in this crisis. And, that was a big part of it. It offered us an opportunity to get to know each other a lot better. And just be connected in an otherwise very disconnected, very virtual world. And everything was done over Zoom. We basically held all of our meetings on a weekly basis on Saturdays, kept each other extremely accountable. And Andy always gave us the kick that we would need, to get things started when we were falling behind. And I'd say that I think the biggest lesson is that, there's project management, and then there is like the setting the bar for what project management should look like. And I think I want to just make a big shout out to Andy that, he really taught me what project management should look like and what a framework for that looks like at a high level. And, things to note: Google Drive, Google Docs, the G Suite was our best friend. When you talk about having a centralized place for everything, we wanted to make sure there was continuity across the board. So all the documents were shared. We restricted access and made sure that everyone had everything within an arm's reach. So the G Suite played a big role in all of this. And then Zoom was a big part of it, obviously, making sure that we always had that. And then WhatsApp. Whenever we needed something urgent or immediate, if we didn't do it over email or Zoom, we would send WhatsApp, because it was, we had people in Canada, we had people in Spain, we had somebody who was in Italy at one point, Mattia. So, the regions and the time zones were a big headache at first. We actually met every day at 10 a.m. It was 4 o'clock in Spain, 10 a.m. on a Saturday in New York and in Canada. So it was fun times. It was fun times.
I can imagine just the different time zones, the different knowledge to share at different times. I mean, that's incredible. The book, the project, it sounds like a major task that you had to do on a global reach, getting everybody in the same time zone, a true passion project. Speaking of passion projects, Eddie, I want to talk about another one that you've been doing for quite a while now, Career Pipe, giving back to the community. Now, in the opening, we talked a lot about your extensive sales background, and you've had to overcome objections, and you're giving back to the community. And can you elaborate a little bit about the inception of Career Pipe? If people don't know about it, we'll definitely put the link, but that passion project's going strong. How did that start? And I know it's a calling within yourself to others, and that's, you practice what you preach.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I had mentioned earlier, so we met, Scott, my business partner, and I, Scott Hanrahan, met at a meetup event in New York through the Enterprise Sales Forum. And Scott and I got to talking about the sales community, what we felt was missing or lacking. And immediately I thought about my own experience in sales and how, everyone and you've heard probably in the Sales Hacker podcast with Scott Ingram, I always say this because it's true and still unfortunately very true for a lot of folks, that no one in my immediate family or friends actually looked like me, were in sales. I didn't have anyone that did B2B sales that resembled or I could identify with. So one of the biggest things for me in building Career Pipe is not only creating access for people who look like me, but also just, kind of reshaping the dialogue around what sales is, specifically B2B sales, and how it is a noble profession if done right. Which is why the teams win championships and the Career Pipe mission kind of overlap, is because we are trying to bring nobility back to the profession, and also simultaneously create access. So Career Pipe's mission is to help underserved and underrepresented college graduates and recent alumni to find a successful career in sales through the Career Pipe program. And what we do is essentially using my network of mentors, using my time spent with the the relationship selling course at Dale Carnegie and all these different professional development programs, outbound sales success, LinkedIn learning. We basically distilled all of it down to just a curriculum of everything that someone in a junior sales role might need on the job to be day one ready. And we basically created a 6-week long boot camp curriculum, wherein after completing the course, they would then get placed into a partnership network with our corporate partners and people looking to hire SDRs. But in doing so, I am actually the professor. I'm the person teaching on Saturday mornings. So at times, especially with teams win championships, like there were days where I couldn't jump on the team call, or we had to move it to a Sunday to try to make the logistics work. But they were kind of happening in parallel. And during the course, I basically teach everything from prospecting, initial outreach, how to do, kind of a discovery call to, even later stage, kind of segments of the sales cycle, all with the goal of making sure that they understood not only what their immediate requirements were as potential SDRs and future junior sales talent, but also in the future as they start to kind of migrate and develop into more senior roles, making sure that they have all the tools necessary to be successful. So part of that is that after the curriculum, after they've been taught the soft skills and the hard skills required, we also pair them with mentors, and they'll have continued access to myself and Scott to really help guide their experience throughout their sales journey and as they begin to find their own sales identity.
Well, I love the concept because you're speaking to somebody who walked in those shoes. Now it's based in New York, right? So you're reaching out to the New York schools, but if you could just kind of walk me through a scenario of an ideal, I don't say ideal client, an ideal student. They get involved, they go to an informational workshop, they get in tune. It's about creating awareness for our great sales profession, because there's some positivity and there's some negativity. So you're trying to draw awareness, but they've got to qualify from a certain status to get in. What's the type of student that you're looking for, and what would it take to start the program?
Yep. So we are starting grassroots. So it is all based in New York. And the students that we've basically been working with, all as a minimum requirement, have to be Pell eligible students in the New York area. So tendency is they're financial aid recipients. The intangible qualities that we're looking for, so we're looking for people who are hungry, motivated, driven, want to succeed, and maybe consider an alternative career path that isn't as traditional. I know that accounting, finance, those have been a lot of the roles that we've been seeing with students. What I'll say to that is a lot of the students that we're working with kind of fell into those roles because they felt like that those were the only options. So for anyone who's naturally curious, who's thinking, well, are there other career choices? Are there other career paths that can be lucrative that could end up providing financial independence? Those are the people that we're looking for, and that are willing to be curious enough to give this a chance and kind of see what Career Pipe and sales in general, what the sales community has to offer. That's the ideal kind of customer profile. There's no GPA requirements. We basically do an interview, myself and Scott, to really understand some of those intangible qualities, because we are looking more for behavioral based kind of characteristics, because we really want to make sure this is equitable and that we're providing as much access and opportunity for as many folks in New York.
And it's been around for about almost 3 years now, and I know you've got the inroads of connections and everything. And I just love how you broke that down specifically, what the ideal student is. But the ideal student is creating an awareness for people who, one, don't get the opportunity, or pretty much don't have an awareness of what's out there in selling. at all backgrounds. And I love what you said in previous interviews is like when somebody approached you about sales, you thought it was just a retail job. So, and shout out Sales Hacker podcast. And that's another resource. So if you go to Eddie's LinkedIn profile, just check out what he's doing. He practices what he preaches. Thanks for breaking down in layman's terms the development of career pipe and, you know, what students can get involved in this. I mean, you're definitely bringing your sales expertise and your mentorship to people out there to get better in our profession of sales, but at least have the opportunity. I know that's a true passion project, and I know the book's a true passion project. As we wrap up, before we do, I'm going to give you the second to last word. I encourage everybody out there to check out Eddie's work, his LinkedIn profile, his social networking sites, what he's doing at Career Pipe, as well as the book that's coming out, Teams Win Championships. In layman's terms, break it down for me, your parting shot. Eddie, anything else that you would like to add before we wrap this up?
Yep. I definitely want to talk about the audience and end on a call to action for both projects. So Career Pipe was dedicated to 21-year-old me trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career and not knowing what it was that really fit. And for anyone who thinks of themselves as a people-oriented person, somebody who likes working with people and helping them solve like really difficult problems or challenges, this whole program is dedicated for you. We think of sales as a very human profession. So from the standpoint of Career Pipe, we encourage anyone who has thought about using either their gift of gab or their love of people to really solve those critical challenges. We are very welcoming and are looking for people like that as we speak. So please sign up. Let us know. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And on the topic of Teams Win Championships, we dedicated this book to, again, me as an individual contributor from my own kind of depth of knowledge and what I felt I could bring to other individual contributors, but also more broadly to sales leaders. We each looked at in our individual kind of knowledge base and what our depth of experience would contribute best to. Mine was that lane, but we have, James had been had owned two businesses separate to this and had successfully exited. Andy is the regional director for multiple countries for Teradata. And then we have, John, who leads up DeMartech as an entrepreneur and has successfully been running his business for several years. So this is dedicated to everyone who's an entrepreneur, anyone who's a sales leader, anyone who's an individual contributor, and people who maybe have found difficulty or challenge in creating a team-based selling approach, or feels like there is still room for improvement to make that a reality. And we highly encourage you to join us on June 15th to not only learn a little bit more about our book and our project and the different charities that we're donating to, but maybe fill in some of those question marks that you have about what it takes to build a consistently top performing sales team. So if you are interested, if these are questions you're asking yourself, we absolutely are welcoming and invite you to join us on June 15th.
I want to thank our special guest, Eddie Baez, for dropping the knowledge about Career Pipe and his upcoming book, Teams Win Championship. Eddie, thank you so much in layman's terms.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who's watching. I hope you join us on June 15th. And I hope you reach out to us and ask us some questions about Career Pipe.
There you have it. Eddie Baez from the Boogie Down Bronx. In layman's terms, thank you for social watching.